This film is born out of our unease with our present.
In our last film, SD Saroj Datta and His Times, we tried to look at the roots of the Naxalite movement, because people know about the Naxalite movements, but documentaries so far didn't look into the backstory of it, like what had happened decades after decades, why did such a movement happen. So we sort of trace it back to the history of the communist movement, to Tebhaga, to Telangana struggle, and after that there was this huge period during the 60s when the peasants wanted the the Benami lands, which means land which was beyond the Land Ceiling Act, but it was sort of occupied by the feudal landlords and jotdars, we call it. So they were occupying those lands illegally, but through the loopholes of law, and the farmers actually wanted to get that land because it was actually illegal going by the Land Ceiling Act. The United Front came to power in Bengal. At that point, the farmers had hoped that this left front, now we have a left party in the government, so now this will happen. So now there will be a big movement to seize those lands. The land control question came up. But the government disappointed them, and they were not encouraging even people from within their party. As you know, the Naxalite movement was a breakaway from the CPIM itself. It was not from outside. So some people within the party, they revolted and they said, no, I mean, we are not going to wait forever, and we are going to get our share of land. So they gave that call, and it began as a land seizure movement, but later on the farmers went one step ahead, and because it was the 70s, all throughout the world there was guerrilla struggles, there was talk of the proletariat getting the power. So the farmers said that we also want political power, we are not going to stop only at the land share. So that's how it all happened. But as you said, the degradation of the left front, I mean, that was early days. I mean, it was too early to say what would have happened. But one could also see that it was a Congress government at that time, and the Congress ruthlessly, they sort of killed all the insurgents and all the guerrilla fighters from the peasants as well as the middle class intelligentsia. So the Congress did a ruthless killing, and after that the Congress has never been able to be significant in Bengal politics, because once that phase of bloody killings was over, the Congress was also over. But the point with the left front is that what the left front could have done is it could have punished all those perpetrators, But what happens with the power is that, whenever some party comes to power, they do have to keep the cops and the whole system. It never changes. Whoever comes to power, I think the power corrupts them in that way. They sort of didn't punish those perpetrators, they didn't finish the inquiry commissions, and didn't give any justice. So that came back much later to haunt them also, because now that somebody else is in power, the same cycle is repeating. So those who are responsible for killings in Nandigram, Singur, they have also not been punished by the new regime of TMC. So again, the TMC, which has now come to power, they have to keep those cops and the whole cop system under their control. So they will also not punish. So it's a cycle that gets repeated, and it's a warning to the powers that, it is not going to last forever. So I think that sort of an ominous sign was there in the previous film also, and now we are in this new film, we are tackling with the rise of the RSS and the BJP in Bengal, which has been going on for quite some time, but it became very visible in the last, let's say, 5-6 years.
Controversy around how the left will behave when they are in government had a very checkered past. In 60s and 70s, when people could saw revolution coming. Their problem with the CPIM at that time was that CPIM was not revolutionary enough. Okay, but after 90s, when the neoliberalism came in, the expectation of also the people was very different, that you don't have to be revolutionary but at least be social democrat and have some pro people policies. Now when Jyoti Basu came to power in 1977, he came up with a partial land reform, and there was some educational reform, and also because before the 5-year period before the 1977 were a bloody period for West Bengal politics, when Congress government killed at least 5,000 people who were mostly young students and peasants. So Congress could never come to power in West Bengal after that period, because we have this collective memory of those period when Congress became very ruthless. It like kind of merged with the emergency excesses and all that thing. But what happened after neoliberalism came, also in Jyoti Basu's time from 94 onwards, he introduced some new economic policies and new industrial policies in 94, and there was this eviction of hawkers and all that. People still accepted that, because in government people had not that kind of a revolutionary expectations from left front government at that time. But what happened when Jyoti Basu was retired and Buddho Dev Babu came to power was that there was a clear shift. Even though Jyoti Babu have done some things that we could be critical of, but it was still a government which at least plays like it catered to the core constituencies of farmers and workers. But Buddha Babu kind of very like said that I don't like strikes, like a communist chief minister talking against strike, talking against any kind of militant movement of its own party. I'm not talking about other parties. He was on camera said that C2 does strikes and I'm ashamed of it. So there is a clear shift to a very typical neoliberal regime, like any other regional parties do typical neoliberal politics. Buddha Babu pursued that with gutso, and that never kind of caught in West Bengal, because their core constituencies were told that left front is a party for farmers and workers. But after 30 years or 20 years, if you just change track and say no, we don't care about farmers and workers, we care only about the neoliberal industrialization, your voter base won't accept that. And that was the main reason when they went out of power in 2011, they could never come back to the power. Like, forget about coming back to the power, the fact that they are now, as you said, they're decimated now. But there was no soul searching in the party that this has happened for whatever reason. We had taken a turn which was rightward. Now we should do some kind of course correction. But sadly, in the last 10 years, there was hardly any course correction. And what happened was that when the TMC is a party which based on some kind of welfare measures, but it is also a very corrupt party. It's also a party which have very high-handed practices. But the left front in opposition couldn't match those things. One of the lament of the lower level cadres was that when they were being beaten up, when they were being killed, no state level leaders were coming to their side. So that vacuum, nobody was with the lower level CPM cadres, was one of the reasons why there was a mass exodus from CPIM to BJP. Because in the rural politics, if you don't have muscle power, if nobody is standing by you and somebody is beating you up, so who would fill that void? BJP with his massive money power and muscle power was basically there in the rural level, and that is one of the main reason why BJP gained so rapidly in Bengal.
When there is a government in a state, and if it's a left front government, then people do expect it to abide by left ideology to a large extent, in the sense that they want the government to be pro farmer, pro worker, like that. So what happened in the period between 2006 and 11, like that, a series of incidents happened when this Singur land grab happened, the Nandigram happened, and the left front government was appearing to the people as corporate friendly, and there was a popular movement against it. Now let me remind you, like people who are outside Bengal, that the movement was not launched by any other political party. It was mostly by the villagers who were affected by these projects. Now what happens in any movement is that whenever there's a popular movement, some other party, which is the opposition party, piggybacks on it. So the same thing happened in Bengal. So the TMC mostly piggybacked on the popular movement, but it was I mean, nobody forgot that the left front government was forgetting its core constituency, which was the farmers. So I think that they should not have done that, and that is something that they are still paying for, because the government has to decide that what is its land acquisition policy going to be, and whether the government will collect land on the behalf of some big company. And also there was the question of how to solve the unemployment problem. Now as we know, like there have been so many economists who have spoken on this, that small corporate factories cannot give a lot of employment. So you have to focus on small and medium sector. So I think there also the left front went slightly wrong, and after that what happened is, once the TMC government came to power, then there was a little bit of a honeymoon period, but later on they did what any government does, like they will also get on to their opponents, they will beat up political opponents, they will not let people vote in the panchayat elections. All that happened. So in 2018 the big thing happened in the panchayat election was that when the TMC really clamped down on the political opponents, and I think that was another opportunity which the left front missed, where they could have stood by their supporters, but they were not able to. So that vacuum, political vacuum, was filled up by the BJP, and BJP became the principal opposition party in Bengal. And now that there's the big money playing, there's this big money that BJP comes with, the corporate backing, the sort of media wave. So at that point, any other party which doesn't have that kind of a media backing or that kind of a corporate backing will bound to lose out, and it becomes a polarized situation between BJP and the TMC. Okay, so that's, I think, ideologically speaking, the left front lost out when it was seen by the farmers as going against them many times, not just one time, in Singur, in Nandigram, in Lalgarh, like that.
There was never a complete land reform in West Bengal. It was a very partial land reform, but after that, even when people got some land, what they could have done after that with that land, because they needed some kind of capital, they needed some kind of means of production so that they could farm the land, and then they had the problem of marketing those produce. So we needed some kind of marketing cooperatives, we needed some kind of cooperatives who would support them with means of production. That never happened, because the cooperative movement in West Bengal was always very it never took off, in fact. We had some kind of cooperative in the cooperative banks, but after a while it only catered to the rich farmers. But West Bengal is a place where you have a huge army of marginal and middle farmers. They needed the money, they needed some means of production, because after 1991 the price of the seeds and fertilizer were growing. So and that space gave, in West Bengal villages you have this very money lenders, the problem of money lenders came up, the problem of big corporates kind of monopolizing the seeds and fertilizer, that problem also came up, which is an all India problem. But the issue is that could have been fought by a cooperative movement. That never took off. Economically, after that first phase of land reform and the first phase of some kind of educational reform, left front couldn't came up with a novel, it couldn't experiment with the changing reality that was happening in Bengal.
If you consider Bengal as a nation, in the sense undivided Bengal, because I mean just across there's Bangladesh, but we have the same roots, like both of my own parents, they come from the other side. So Bengal as a nation, if you consider, Muslims are the majority, right? So if you ask somebody like what is the biggest Bengali festival, the answer should be Eid. It's not Durga Puja as we seem. So that was the reality. So Bengalis were a nation with Muslims majority and also Hindus, okay, quite a fair number. So there were fault lines, obviously. I mean, the reason that partition happened was not completely that the British wanted it to happen and there was no fault line in the society. That's not true. There was a fault line in the society in the sense that Hindu zamindars on the other side, you know, what is now Bangladesh, the Hindu zamindars used to dominate over Muslim peasants who were marginal. So that was the overall picture. So sooner or the later, you know, Muslims had to get their political share of their power, and that was one of the reasons why this whole thing happened. And of course, there was the British design and everything added to that. Now the thing is, if you read historian Joya Chatterjee, who has a very radical take on why the partition happened and what are the spoils of partition. So she wonders, and it's I share her view in that. She was wondering, like, why didn't the BJP start in Bengal itself, because it was very fertile ground in the partition time, you know, like 1947 there was the great Calcutta killing, where in which about 2,000 to 3,000 people, they killed each other. Then there was the Noakhali riots. If you look at 1947 15th August, then you will see that Gandhiji was in Calcutta trying to, you know, calm down the people who were fighting in riots. He was not in Delhi. He was not enjoying the procession that was happening in Delhi. So Calcutta was a hotbed of this because of the partition. I mean, if you divide a land, and unlike Punjab, there was not a population exchange. The refugees were left to themselves. Like, if you have to go from this side to that side, you do it yourself. If you are coming from there to here, the central government is not going to assist you. Nehru had no policy for Bengali refugees, unlike what happened in Punjab. So right now when people are wondering like what is happening, they have to understand that for Punjab it was almost a closed chapter, because there was population exchange, there was property exchange, but here in Bengal nothing of that. And also the rehabilitation policy of the refugees was also an unfinished business. So in that kind of a scenario, just imagine, it was very natural for the Hindu Mahasabha to you know, grab power or become very powerful, and they tried their best. But we were very lucky. I mean, history is also sometimes about the right movements happening at the right time. We were very lucky that an independent, you know, this refugee movement happened in Bengal, and the left, all the left leaders of Bengal, if you trace them back, 80% or 90% of them are refugees themselves. Take anyone, Jyoti Basu, anyone. I mean, they have roots in the other Bengal. So all these left parties, CPI, CPIM, they had a lot of roots in the refugee movement. So the refugee movement could not be dominated by Hindu Mahasabha. That was when Bengal got lucky. It could have been right wing from then onwards only. We just got lucky that the Hindu Mahasabha did not champion the refugee cause, and it was the left who championed the refugee cause. So the left front coming to power is also a lot about refugee rehabilitation movement, because if you look at how the refugees got their land, a lot of that was you know, what we call Jabardakhl colonies, which means you just grab the land by your own numbers. There's empty land, lot of zamindari property, go and sit there, and it's squatter colonies, we call it. It was not given to them by the government. Okay. So that is how it happened. So we got lucky one time that, you know, at that point of time Hindu Mahasabha did not grow. But like you're saying, the roots were there. Like as you see, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, who is like the one of the founding fathers of the right wing of Hindu Mahasabha, he was from Bengal, and he has been a theorist. He was against United Bengal. He was very much for divided Bengal. So that was already there. But then Shyama Prasad died very soon. He was they didn't expect that to happen. Right? He went to Kashmir and that episode happened and he just died from a disease. So at that point of time, with his death, there was a lot of, the Hindu Mahasabha power came down. And obviously after Gandhi's assassination also, all over the India, the RSS was down. But the roots stayed there, because I said, like, the unfinished business of partition in Bengal still continues. Like in our film also, we tried to show that when you are talking about the NRC and CAA politics, the way the CAA politics plays out in the rest of India and the way it plays out in Bengal is totally different. Okay, in the rest of India it is about, provoking the Muslims alone, but in Bengal it is provoking the Muslims, one, and the second big point is trying to make a voter constituency from the East Bengali Namashudra community, which is a Dalit community which came from East Bengal, but they had unresolved issues with their citizenship and land question. So the BJP now wants to champion them. And that's another fault line which we can talk about if you ask me. But culturally, the Hindu Mahasabha roots have been there, the RSS roots have also been there, and from 1970s onward, the RSS has very steadily worked in rural Bengal, very, very steadily. It just this is where we also have to understand the strength of the enemy, because they were electorally, they were a big zero in the 70s, but still they are working on the ground on this cultural and educational sphere, and they're trying to build from scratch. So they have continuous history of work from 1974. And now if you look at where the Durga Vahini camps are happening in Bengal, they are in the old ashrams that the RSS has built in 1974. Those core areas, 3-4 areas they have, where they have those fortress like, camps where they can do it. But what happened was, in the recent times when the BJP came to power in the central government, after that they had a huge qualitative jump, because now they are getting all the infrastructural support, they are getting a huge amount of money. That's not a small deal, right? And the other areas they started working, the RSS, was one is among the their first constituency was the Hindi speaking migrant population from Bihar, Jharkhand and UP, which are on the the western coalfield belt of West Bengal, Asansol, Raniganj, Durgapur, that side. The second constituency they are trying to build is the tribal belt, like through their Vanvasi Kalyan ashram. They are trying to get the other tribals to fight against the Bengal Sautals. Sautals are the biggest tribals in Bengal, but there are other tribes. So they are trying to become the champion of the other tribes, right? Then the third, they are trying to get the Matuas, which is the Namashudra refugees who came much later after the 1971 war. So that's their third one. And the fourth one is the tribes of North Bengal, which who have their own demands of local, local autonomy or power share in the local governance that has been not catered to. They have their own grievances. So that's the fourth constituency. These are the four constituencies that the RSS is very focused on. Gorkhas. And also Gorkhas.
Sangh Paribar had always tried to appropriate Vivekananda and Aurobindo. They are their icons. Sometimes left also try to say that no, Vivekananda is not fully right-wing and he has said some pro-worker things and pro-progressive things, and that's true also in a broad way. The kind of very, like they also have Bankim Chandra. You missed out Bankim Chandra because he has written the Anandamat, which is completely a very communal book. So in the past of Bengal, when the Hindu revivalism started, it started also from Bengal. We had Vivekananda, we had Bankim Chandra, we had all those people. But somehow we also had Rabindranath, we also had Nazrul, we also had Chaitanya. So these people talked about syncretism, plurality and progressive values. And also the history of left movement, left may have 1,000 fault lines, but they were united against any form of communalism. You can fault any left with any number of reasons, but as we have said in our documentary that I can critique Jyoti Babu about many things, but it's the fact that and communal politics could never rear its head when left was in power. And left draws its strength not only from itself, but it draws its sustenance from the history that we have. History of, as I said, Bidyasagar, Rabindranath. There's a progressive value, like progressive movement in Bengal for a pretty long time. Just like in Tamil Nadu, just like in Kerala. Although we have a past which had a kind of right-wing tint to it, but we have also had a past of a progressive humanist value system that is also ingrained in Bengal. It is not only like confined to very educated people. In some way or other, even a farmer know about Rabi Thakur in their own way. He or she know about Nazrul in his or her own way. So that is also there, and we have 100 years of left movement. Maybe it is right now in a very in shambles, but we had that, and that had played its part. The fact that BJP was routed in power this time, it had lot to do with the past that we had. It's because people got so scared that they are coming to power. It meant as if whatever Bengal stands for, if they come to power, everything will end. That kind of fear, that kind of that is other parts of India might not understand the sentiment that BJP is coming to power. For many of them would be like coming off any other parties, but for us it was not that. It was just as if the end of civilization is going to happen. So people got really scared, and some of the movement that happened before the election had to do a lot with that fear that we had in our mind.
You were asking about inventing new festivals. So we in our film you see this VHP Eastern region, the chief person. We are interviewing him. So there's only very small bit of the interview in the film, but it was a very long interview. So he is speaking on camera. He's saying that in Bengal people do Janmashtami, which is Krishna's birthday. So that they do in their own homes. But what is the use politically for Hindus? He's saying that we want people to come out and do it on the streets so that it becomes a political assertion of Hindus, even Janmashtami. So similarly, there is Saraswati Puja, which everybody does in their own homes, and it's a very it's like Bengalis Valentine's Day. So all the lovers, they are out. It's nothing to do with puja as such. It's just a off day for nobody studies and people are just having fun. So they want to turn that into something of Hindu assertion. So it doesn't always work, but their point of view is you have to change every festival so that it becomes a political assertion of Hindus, and it's their strategy all over the place. Like they have introduced this Janmashtami, which is a like on the road Janmashtami, that was never there in Bengal. It's something that they tried to introduce. It has not caught up. It's not going viral or anything, but they have started at least. They have started this Ganesh Puja, which is completely absent in Bengal. There was nothing about Ganesh. It's a completely foreign implant. So those are the things. Then Ram is used to be completely absent in Bengal. Only in very small pockets, some very very sweet ceremonies which are not even violent or aggressive or anything. They were just small Ram. What do they call? They read the Ramcharitmanas, like that working class people's festival in some pockets. But they have now turned it again into that kind of a macho, aggressive political assertion. So that's one level that they're playing with the festivals. The other level is also very, it's a very devilish kind of plan. I'll give you 2-3 examples. One is in Sundarbans, the coastal region, which is Bangladesh and India both have the Sundarbans. So Sundarbans is populated by very precarious working class people who depend on the forest for their survival. So they catch the fish, they catch the crab, they go to collect honey from the forest. That kind of people. So they have a very nature like religion. So they worship the tiger god. Right. So tiger god, which is half tiger and half human. So they call it Dokhin Rai and Bon Bibi. These are the two deities they worship. They don't worship all the deities that the other upper caste people worship in the rest of Bengal. So even the BJP has built a big base, the RSS, in the coastal region, and they are trying to change the look of Dakshin Rai because he looks Muslim. So they don't like it. So they are trying to, like, the beard is growing smaller in the deity itself. They are trying to do that kind of social engineering. Then there is another yatra called Tarokeshwar. So people, there's a month when they go to a place called Tarokeshwar, which is a Shiv's place. And the people who go there are not educated and elite people. It's just very working class. It's a very sort of subaltern ritual where people just carry the water and they go. And it used to be very harmless. Like mostly like you're very devout people would go. They'll just spend 1 month doing that. It's a lot of what should I call, austerity, like Kavariya type of thing. But it used to be very non-aggressive and very harmless. Right now they are like last 2-3 years we have been noticing that the songs that they play in that yatra, it used to be Bengali songs of Shiv, which are very melancholy and sad in tune and like that, they're very bhakti type. But now the songs are like aggressive, and it says that if you do not believe in our Shiv, then we'll chop you off, we'll finish you off. It's like the North Indian Shiv has somehow entered. It's completely bizarre, but they're doing all these small things like changing the DJ mix also. For every festival the DJ mix itself is changing, and the DJ thing was not common here. So you can see the level of infiltration into every kind of religion, every kind of local speciality or local unique kind of religion, which was not like a monolithic Hindu religion, nothing like that. But okay, but having said all of that, everything has backfired. We should also understand that however much you plan, it has backfired because now people have started feeling that it's all too foreign. Like I can't even recognize my own festival. It's become so foreign to me that it's not what I used to be. So like there was also a repulsion against Ram, like this imposition of Ram from outside. Like we don't have any Ram here. Why are you imposing it so heavily on us? Right. So we were very happy with Durga and Kali and all those things. And Kali is a deity in which prasad, you have meat, like you have mutton as Kali's prasad. So how can it fit with RSS? They are like, you have to go vegetarian. Like who is going to go vegetarian in Bengal? Nobody. Nobody is in a mood to do all that. So it has also backfired, but we can also understand that they are trying to continuously do it through social engineering and very minute, what should I say, surgical strikes on religion. Like that.
I had asked VHP person that whatever you are doing with Ram and all those things, that is inimical to Bengal because we have no history with Ram, right? But why don't you try out Chaitanya and all those things which are local to our... He had no answer to that. He said that we have tried doing one Chaitanya Jatra from Nadia, which is the birthplace of Chaitanya Dev, to the Puri. But I could understand that that has not worked. Now they are trying only this North Indian version that they only know of Ram and all those things. But the problem with Bengal and with other places which are not part of Aryavarta, even the south, is that we had a very different kind of religion altogether. Just like, for example, in Bengal, so the so-called Brahmins also, they eat meat, they eat everything. So they are very different culturally from north. But if they have to have any kind of long-term vision for Bengal, they have to come out of this North India fascination that they have. And I think that is the sinister part, they might change their track.
Like in Goa, they change it.
Yeah.
That.